Hey, what's up YouTube? My name is Nigel Bajos, and today I wanted to bring you guys a video that hopefully answers a question that I get a lot actually, and that is, what camera do I film a lot of my YouTube videos with? Now, I have a lot of cameras that I really like for different reasons, and I've used and owned and borrowed and rented a lot of different cameras over the years. But my favorite camera, and the camera that I've been rolling with for a while now, is actually this little guy right here. This is the Panasonic GH3. It's been replaced by the Panasonic GH4 and the GH5. All of those cameras have kind of come out since this has been out, and to be honest, I'm gonna tell you the things that I like and why I still own this camera and why I still use it, and I'm still making money with this camera, but I'm also gonna tell you why I don't think that you should ever buy this camera. Not because it's a bad camera, but mostly just because there are a lot better options out there for around the same price. So first off, let's talk about why I like this camera so much. This camera, I think, is a really good 1080p camera. I have mixed footage from this camera in with, Blackmagic Pocket cinema camera footage, and you can't even tell the difference. When it's like really, big dynamic range shots, this one will obviously not perform as well. But as far as sharpness, this one mixes really well with a Blackmagic Pocket. And this shoots in a really edit-friendly codec. It shoots in .mov 72 megabits per second in all-I, which is the iframe recording. And it's really good. It's really easy to edit with, and just for creating content and putting it through your editor, it's really easy for a lot of computers to handle the footage that this camera spits out. And it's also just really sharp and really detailed. This came out after the GH2 did, and the GH2 was an okay camera by itself, but it got even better when it was hacked, and a lot of people were getting amazing footage when the GH2 got hacked. And so this was kind of Panasonic's answer to the GH2, where it's like, okay, you don't have to hack it this time. This time we'll just give you a really good video camera. And they totally did. The GH3 is awesome. So a couple other things that I really like about this camera is that it has a headphone jack, which at the time of this camera's release was like revolutionary, because cameras of this size just never had headphone jacks. All of the Canon DSLRs lacked headphone jacks. And I still use this camera, like I said, for paid gigs, shooting interviews and stuff like that. And when I'm recording audio internally on the camera, it's really important to have that headphone jack so I can hear if I'm, picking up, proper audio. So that was really awesome to have. Another thing that I really like is that the SD card slot is right there on the hand grip, and so you don't have to go under to the battery compartment to get at the SD card. Which brings me to another point. The batteries on this camera last forever. Like, I've only ever owned 3 batteries of this, and that's just being extra careful, but I don't think I've ever gone through 2 on a full day shoot. This camera is really good on battery life. Same goes for the GH4 and probably the GH5, although the GH5 has that, that in-body image stabilization, so that might drain the battery a little bit more. But yeah, the battery on this is crazy good. Way better than the Sony a6000 and miles better than the Blackmagic Pocket, but it doesn't really take that much to beat the Blackmagic Pocket when it comes to battery life. Another really cool thing about this camera is that it is weather sealed. So, I live here in Oregon and it rains a lot, and I go out in the mountains, and having a weather sealed body is a really nice feature to have. Obviously you do need a weather sealed lens, which I have the Panasonic 12-35, and that one's weather sealed. So, that combo is a great little documentary adventure shooting rig. And yeah, that's another nice thing to have, is a weather sealed body. Things that it doesn't have that I really wish that it did was, just things like focus peaking and a flat picture profile. It doesn't have any flat picture profile, like no Cinelike D or Cinelike V. That kind of stuff wasn't really, coming in to the market at the, the time of this camera's release. You can go into the custom, picture profile settings and, turn the contrast and the saturation all the way down. So yeah, for this camera back in the day, they weren't really putting flat profiles into cameras like this, and you couldn't put Technicolor Cinestyle or anything like that. That was just for Canon cameras. that's kind of a bummer, but this camera, you know, shoots in a really robust codec, so it's really easy to bring up the shadows, and you know, you can sometimes save the highlights, but bringing up the shadows with this is not too bad. I've done it on a few interviews that I've shot and it works out really well. And then just focus peaking. It's really nice to have focus peaking. Like I use the Sigma 18-35 with the Metabone speed booster on this little guy, and having focus peaking would be a really nice feature just so I could really dial in my focus. When I'm using that kind of a setup, I do have to have an external monitor up on top that has focus peaking just so I can make sure that I'm, you know, getting my subjects in focus. But if you're using a native mount lens, just half pressing the shutter button to get your focus and then just pressing record with the shutter button is really easy, especially when you're just like running and gunning and getting like some B-roll and stuff like that. So some of the accessories that I have for this camera, as you guys can see, I've kind of, you know, covered a lot of the parts that get scratched a lot with gaff tape, which I've talked about that in a couple other videos. Gaff tape is awesome. And I have my tripod plate, obviously. This is the one for the newer S2s. I did a review on those a little while back. You guys want to check those out. Then I have my Panasonic 14mm f2.5, which it's not the sharpest lens, but it's still pretty sharp for f2.5, and definitely a really good bang for your buck little lens. This thing's only like 150 bucks on eBay right now. And then I have that metal lens hood that I talked about in my last video. And I like to roll with this lens because it gives me about a 28mm equivalent field of view. So that's really good for like landscapes and, you know, adventure type stuff. And then I have my beloved Comica VM10, which I did a review on as well, and I'll put that in the link in the description below. And I love this mic. The Panasonic GH3 and the GH4, I'm sure they have really good preamps. Well, I mean, they're not the best, but they're definitely better than anything out of a Canon DSLR. So I definitely like just being able to plug a mic right into my camera and not have to have any external preamp, or not have to have a mic that has a, you know, a dB boost on it, like, you know, something like the Rode VideoMic Pro. Those are great mics, but you do have to have batteries in them, so that's kind of annoying. With this little Comica, it performs really well paired with the GH3. You guys can tell from the review that I did that it actually sounded cleaner and better than my Takstar SGC 698, which was the mic that I was using on this camera the most. But after I got this mic, the Takstar isn't really getting that much use. So yeah, this is a great little mic, you know, paired with a Panasonic camera or a Sony camera. They do have better preamps than the Canon DSLRs as well. So again, this mic is a thumbs up for me. So the last little piece of kit that I use when I, you know, shoot out in the mountains or whatever, or definitely out in bright sunlight, is this little eye cup from a company called Miller & Snyder. Now on their website they have it listed as, you know, working for the Panasonic GH4 and the GH3, and the GH4 and the GH3 have the exact same body size, and so that's why I'm sure they thought that it would work, you know, just fine on the GH3. But the GH4 has a bigger viewfinder and the GH3 has a much smaller one, so you actually have to be closer to the EVF in order to see the whole image. So what I actually had to do was take a scissor to this $30 eye cup and cut it down, just start cutting little pieces of it off, just to where I could put my eye up to it and I could see the entire image, which that's kind of a bummer, but it is really nice when you're shooting out in bright sunlight and you just want to block out all the sun and just be able to, you know, get your shot. The GH3's EVF isn't the greatest, but it's definitely good enough for focus and exposure, and definitely just framing as well. I don't really like using those LCD VFs anymore. They're just too big and cumbersome, and I'd rather have something nice and small that I can just kind of like, you know, tuck my hands up in and just, you know, get my shot and roll out instead of having to, like, you know, take out an LCD VF and stick it on there just to get my shot. So this little eye cup by Miller & Snyder, it's like 30 bucks, so it's kind of spendy for just a piece of rubber, but it'll work really well on your GH4 if you have one. But if you're a GH3 shooter like me, then you might have to, you know, shave it down a little bit in order to be able to see the full image. So now let's get to where I was talking about why I wouldn't recommend this camera. I've told you guys a lot of the things that I liked and a lot of the things that I didn't like about it, but this isn't really a review of this camera. This camera is pretty old. It came out in, man, 2011, I think. But But the reason why I would not recommend this camera is because it just doesn't make sense to buy this camera anymore. There are way better cameras by Panasonic that have come out. The G7 is only like $450, which is insane. It'll produce a much better image than this. It doesn't have a headphone jack or, you know, weather sealed body or anything like that, but as far as the image goes, the G7 is better than this camera. The G85, which, you know, it came out pretty recently, but it's still only like $700. Way better than this camera. Has in-body image stabilization and weather sealing. No headphone jack, but that's literally the only thing that this GH3 really has on that camera. Maybe the battery too, but it's not really that big of a deal. So yeah, this is my favorite camera that I've owned, and I still make money off of it. I still use it for, you know, professional gigs that I get, and it still is perfectly sufficient for a lot of people. So if you are a GH3 shooter, hopefully this is encouraging to you that, like, I still use the GH3. But yeah, there's definitely better options out there for, you know, just either a little bit more money or like the same price that are better than the GH3. I really like it, but definitely doesn't really make sense to buy this camera anymore. But this is the camera that I've shot a lot of my projects on and what I've shot a lot of my YouTube videos on. At the end of the day, the GH3 just works, and I think that's what, as a professional or just as any kind of creator, you just want a piece of kit that just works, and the GH3 is that camera for me. I can throw it in my bag, you know, beat it up and take it out, and I know that it's gonna work every single time. I didn't really feel as confident with my Blackmagic Pocket or with my Sony a6000 with its, you know, overheating issues and the battery dying, and the Blackmagic Pocket with its horrible battery life, and then all of the things that I had to rig up into it to make it work. This camera just works, and it's great. So if you have one, hopefully this is encouraging to you that, like, it's still being used. You're not the only one out there. I use this camera a lot too. And if you don't have one, don't buy it. Go and buy the G7 or the G85 if you want a good Panasonic camera, because, you know, they're 4K, and the G85 is probably the best bang for your buck. I'm really tempted to buy that camera, but the GH3 has been doing everything that I needed to do so far. But yeah, definitely wouldn't recommend this camera. There are definitely better options out there for about the same price. So yeah, I hope that answers some of you guys' questions. And if you guys like this video, it'd be great if you hit the like button and subscribe to my channel if you want to see more content. I should be, you know, pumping out more content on a more regular basis now. As you can see, I kind of got a new space set up. So yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed this, and I will see you next time. Later.